The article I'd like to talk about today is an article that I came across in the Columbus Dispatch, talking about the Columbus Division of Police and the number of officers that are leaving in the year 2021. The article talks a little bit about, and there's some stuff about it right here below the picture, how so far this year there have been 75 officers who have retired. There's another 15 officers who have resigned, which means they left the department prior to their retirement date. And there's a potential for up to 100 additional officers to leave the department. This part with the 100 additional officers is due to the recent FOP contract that was agreed upon between the officers of the Columbus Division of Police and the City of Columbus. And one of the things that was offered to, I believe it was the top 100 most senior officers on the department, is the option to take a $200,000 buyout. A little side note about that is I saw some rumblings in the public, people complaining that offering officers $200,000 to leave the job is a reward, in their opinion, for bad behavior. One thing I would like to point out for people who understand things like math is that depending on how long the officer has left in either his prior to retirement, or there's a program called DROP where officers can stay for 8 years after retirement, many of the officers eligible to take this bonus have the ability to earn more than $200,000 during that period of time. So if you understand anything about math, this $200,000 is not a huge sum of money in the grand scheme of things when you're talking about these officers coming on their final days towards retirement. Moving on. So the reporter in this case found an officer who, his name is Dan Gervasio. He was an officer of the Columbus Division of Police for 5.5 years, and he primarily worked on the city's west side. The west side of Columbus is an extremely dangerous and high crime area of the city. I'll also point out, it's mentioned in this article, that Officer Gervasio is not from the city of Columbus. He actually moved to Columbus from New York, and I believe he lived in the city of New York because he had a strong accent, just to become a police officer. So coming all the way to Columbus, Ohio from New York to work in one of the most dangerous high crime areas of the city.
Well, surprised and angry. That's how Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther described his reaction to the findings.
Anyway, that's the kind of officer Dan Gervasio was. The reporter got a hold of Officer Gervasio and asked him why he chose to resign. This is the quote that stood out to me the most. Officer Gervasio said, "It didn't work for me to work my butt off in a job that would eventually kill me for a city that didn't want me to do the job. I left the job when City Council, the mayor, and our own department turned their backs on it." Those are the words of Officer Gervasio when he's talking about why he chose to leave the Columbus Division of Police. Now, this reporter, her name was Bethany Brewer. I'm sorry, I didn't look at the top before I scrolled down. But she's a good reporter. I believe she's pretty fair. And one thing that you have to do if you're a good reporter and you're fair is you have to talk to people on both sides of this discussion. So the reporter went and found the mayor of the city of Columbus. His name is Andrew J. Ginther, and she spoke to him about this topic. The words that he chose to say were, "There are some that are clearly resistant to change and reform, and that's fine. That's a chance for them to be the police somewhere else." I've heard many versions of this phrase stated. I follow a lot of different news sites and even a lot of different social media accounts. One variation of this that I've heard is that the officers who are leaving these departments,
thousands of charges in Franklin County Municipal.
I hate these websites, but they're saying that the officers who are leaving these departments en masse are the ones who are refusing to accept reform. I'll tell you personally that Officer Gervasio right here is not one of those officers. Officer Gervasio was a very good officer, very dedicated to being a good officer. And not a single thing that's being proposed as a police reform would have a negative effect on him. The things that are affecting him and that made him make his decision to leave are something very different. And I think it's important that everybody understand what's going on. So last summer, the summer of 2020, everybody knows every major metropolitan city in the country was consumed by violent riots. These were riots where here in the city of Columbus, people marched up and down High Street. They destroyed bus stops. They smashed windows. They broke into the State House, which is the capital of the state of Ohio. They broke into the theater district, so the Palace Theater, and there's another major theater downtown. These are playhouses. They're not movie theaters. These are old buildings. They smashed the windows. One of them was lit on fire. There was also an apartment building just to the east of downtown that was under construction. That building was lit on fire, and I believe it caused millions of dollars to that building alone. Along with the fact that these riots lasted for several months downtown, forcing many businesses to close their doors. I have a friend who operates a restaurant downtown, and he was texting me almost daily asking if it was safe for them to open the restaurant. So there was a lot of stuff that happened, a lot of money that was lost, and a lot of lives that were affected by what was going on downtown. And the officers were doing their best to make that stop, but they were running into some challenges that I don't think I'm going to address in this video. But immediately after those riots, what the officers saw was that the city of Columbus dismissed thousands of cases in the interest of community justice. Here's a local news report on that.
Tonight, thousands of charges in Franklin County Municipal Court were dismissed. And the reason? In the interest of community justice. Thank you for joining us for 10 TV News at 6. I'm Tracy Townsend.
And I'm Yolanda Harris. So what does that mean? Crime Tracker 10's Lacey Crisp dug into why so many charges were wiped off the books.
How would you feel if you could have a speeding ticket taken off your record? Well, the city attorney's office said they dismissed more than 4,000 cases this summer due to COVID-19. But we found some of those cases involved resisting arrest and theft.
Listen, you're going to go to jail. Step out of the car.
I'm not going to show that whole video, but this was actually a video of somebody resisting arrest. A lot of the other cases that were dismissed were the rioters. I'm not going to sit here and show dozens of articles while I'm making this video, but there were other articles talking about how many of the rioters had their cases dismissed. And some of those were in a separate mass dismissal of cases in which the city attorney's office decided that they were going to dismiss these due to clerical errors. One of the other things that the city was doing at the same time as they were dismissing criminal charges against a lot of the rioters who had caused problems downtown is that the city hired a law firm to investigate the actions of the officers who responded downtown. They paid this law firm Baker Hostetler a little over $500,000 with the stated goal of finding police officers that they wanted to charge with criminal offenses because of their response to the riots. I had this video paused right where I wanted it. Let's see if we can.
Of an outside law firm into police officers' use of force during this summer's protests. The law firm says there were challenges and that it had trouble proving or disproving many of the allegations. There are a lot of layers to this story, so we're going to bring you team coverage on this tonight. 10 TV's Lacey Crisp and Bennett Haberly have been following this investigation since the beginning.
See if I can find the spot I wanted. It's coming up. Well, I mean, if you want, you can watch a little bit of footage of the riots. I have it in some other spots. Here we go. So here's a little breakdown of what this law firm investigated.
The law firm reviewed nearly 36 complaints, exonerating 4 officers, sustaining a use of force complaint against 1 officer. 9 allegations were unfounded, 2 others were withdrawn, and 25 allegations related to the use of force were not sustained.
So the city of Columbus set up an email address and a phone hotline where they encouraged the citizens who were downtown at the riots to call in and make complaints against Columbus police officers. They then hired a law firm and spent a little over $500,000, and that law firm investigated nearly 3,000 complaints. They exonerated 4 officers. They sustained charges against 1 officer, and then had 9 charges listed as unfounded. 2 were withdrawn. A lot of these were for a variety of reasons. They had victims who refused to cooperate in many cases. As far as the not sustained cases, I'm going to let you hear what the mayor had to say.
Which does not mean that the officers were exonerated, but simply that there was not enough evidence to prove or disprove the complaint.
Mayor Andrew Ginther said his takeaway is that there is a need for police reform, a citizen review board, and an inspector general to review future cases.
Okay, so what the officers are seeing here is that they responded to riots downtown. The rioters had their charges dismissed, so the city hires a law firm, pays them over $500,000, and then when the law firm only comes up with a sustained complaint against 1 police officer, the local politicians use that as an opportunity to say that they need more police reform and more government oversight, basically saying that they were upset they were unable to charge more police officers with crimes. So when you have a young police officer like Officer Gervasio, who moved to the city of Columbus from far away, chose to work on the west side of Columbus, which is a very high crime area, an area that if you're going to be a police officer in that part of town, you're going to have to work your tail off. And what Officer Gervasio, from his perspective, was that he's no longer going to work his tail off for a city that he feels doesn't want him doing his job. Because if they wanted him doing his job, they wouldn't be dismissing all the charges that he's writing in the course of his work. And he also feels that the city is putting more energy into finding a reason to arrest and charge police officers than they are for finding reasons to arrest and charge the people who were smashing windows and lighting buildings on fire downtown. And that, in my opinion, is the reason that you're seeing a mass exodus of police officers from major metropolitan cities across the country, because this didn't just happen in Columbus. There's stories like this of happening everywhere. Portland police officers are leaving en masse. Minneapolis, I'm not sure if they even still have a police department. Police officers are resigning and finding other ways to make money all across the country, because there's a large segment of politicians who are showing that they care more about charging police officers with crime than they do about finding criminals who are guilty of crimes. And that's why police officers are leaving. Those are my thoughts for today. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.